Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of the first day of Python Sweden. So we begin our afternoon program now by having our afternoon keynotes. So today we are very honored to have Érico and Andrei to give us the afternoon keynote. So Érico is a developer advocate at the dark side, and he discovered Python and improved his karma over the last 17 years, where he founded two companies, worked in many startups, and also helped the Brazilian government to maintain their portals using open source solutions. He also chaired the Brazilian PyCon. Érico is also a Python Software Foundation Fellow and currently the Plone Foundation Vice President. So today, Érico will share with us his project, Not Fading Away, a tale about a 20-year-old Python project. So without further ado, we let Érico to give the keynote. So Érico, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Uh, Good afternoon, good morning, good night. It really depends on the time zone. This is the beauty of online conference, right? So before I start, let just add something. I am Brazilian. I live in Berlin. I work for many companies in the past. I like to name Microsoft. I'm really grateful for starting my career there a long time ago. I was CTO for Rocket Internet in Latin America. I worked as CTO for some startups in Berlin. My last project was Pendact. It was a news portal, a collaborative platform to like a Reddit, but for real news and not opinions. So the first question that we should answer is what is Plum? But before we talk about what is Plum, we try to say what is Plum, we need a bit of history. First of all, we start with Plum is a bunch of code, right? It's a code base that started back in 1999. We consider 20 years now because the first release is from October 4, 2001. It was named after Plone, the electronic music band. We have now surpassed their kind of famous. We are more famous than them, and we started just as an attempt to give a nice user interface for Zope. Zope was one of the first application servers written in Python. Actually, there was an old saying that back in the early days of Python, Zope will lead and Python will follow. So Zope is a really nice experiment on how you do web development in a complete different way. And we started basically trying to make Zope more beautiful. You see the first screen on the top. It's the really first public release of Plum. And then this community started to grow and build more code, and now we are the most important Python open source CMS by far. But code does not write itself, right? We need people. And what about people? First of all, it started in IRC. You remember the old days when we had IRC? It was an online community. It was bootstrapped by an American and a Norwegian. They share the love for electronic music and for this band called Plone, and they decided to implement this UX on top of Zope, right? One interesting point is the fact that they were focused on improving the usability of an existing solution. Their focus and the focus of Plum since then is usability, right? Also, we started adopting some of the lessons from the Zope community. So we start doing sprints. Back in 2002 or 3, we had our first sprint, and we moved from online to offline thanks to conferences. We now have a annual conference since 2003. It started in New Orleans this year. It's going to be online. It starts in 2 days. You can go to 2021.plumconf.org. There are still tickets available. But as every other Python sub community, we started in a major Python conference. At the time, it was EuroPython. So we do have like a love for EuroPython because it was the place we would meet to discuss the community a long time ago. You can see some pictures of previous sprints, and the one on top, it's called Sauna Sprint. It was hosted in Helsinki, Finland. We've been to castles in Austria, we've been to archipelagos, we've been to all corners of the world, sprinting to make Plone a better solution. And down we have a picture of EuroPython 12-13. It was a really nice conference, one of the best conferences I ever been to. And on the lower left corner, you have this guy, Guido van Hossum, that created the Python language. It's interesting because up to this day we use code that was written by Guido when he worked for Zope back in the 90s. But when you start writing code and you create this code base and you have people, you need some kind of legal support. Then we created back in 2004 a structure, a formal structure. That's the Plum Foundation. It's a 501c3 non-profit organization in the US. We have the goal of promote and protect Plum. We manage all the intellectual property. It goes to code-based brand. Any intellectual property we come up with, it's there. It's interesting because the moment we take care of the code base, we need some kind of legal agreement. So we have a contributor agreement. Nowadays, in the times of everything is MIT or BSD license, it's kind of strange, but to contribute to Plone, you need to sign a document allowing us to use your code. And if you're part of a company, you need to go back and also get like their blessing and so on and so forth. So we do have a bit of legalese involved. And also, as a foundation, we coordinate the marketing and raise funds to the community. One important point here, Plone is maintained by the Plone Foundation. There's no company that developed Plone originally and makes money out of Plone primarily. We are truly an open source project. But 20 years later, what is Plone? And I'm going to tell you in order of importance. First thing, Plone is a worldwide and very diverse community, mostly online. But we love to gather, we love to meet, we love to talk to each other in person. So we go to events, we have sprints everywhere on the planet. And this is the way that the software is built, because of course without the people behind there's no code. And about the code, Plone is a content management system. Plone is meant to build websites, to maintain websites, and we have sites like the whole Brazilian government uses Plone, FBI uses Plone, many universities around the world use Plone, many NGOs use Plone, the Free Software Foundation uses Plone. We have all types of sites, we have all types of intranets. We have, and again, thanks to the Zope code base we have an outstanding security record compared to any other CMS, open source CMS. We are way better. we always, from day zero, we focus on usability. We focus on having a multilingual solution. That's the advantage of creating a project with people that do not speak the same language. Their mother language is not the same. So it becomes an interesting challenge how to take care of the whole accented names like mine, or how to take care of translating the same site to 6 or 7 languages, like happens with, for instance, the European Environmental Agency. These are requirements we always needed to take care of. So Plone covers that, and also Plone authenticates with almost every type of authentication system. It goes from a simple user and password. By default, you go to OAuth integration, and we have a really interesting success case in the Brazilian government authenticating against a mainframe. So the whole user accounts were hosted by were maintained in a mainframe, and Plone, as the intranet solution for this Brazilian government organization, had to talk to this and get. And now we are on the version 6, or actually we are to release the version 6 of Plone. It was a really, really interesting track. But Plone is also a foundation. Plone is also a legal structure. This legal structure is composed by around 90 active members from all over the world. And we also have around 200 and something emeritus members, that people that are not part of the foundation anymore, but they were at some point in their life. And we fund sprints every year. Of course, with the whole 2020-2021 long year of COVID, it was a different game. But the previous year we had like 15 sprints around the world that were funded by the Plum Foundation. And really important, we enforce rules on license. We enforce rules on code of conduct. The Plum Foundation is like the enforcer of community rules when it comes to this, right? Plum Foundation, Plone CMS, and the Plone community. 20 years have passed, and let's be honest, it's never about how we are here or what we are today, but about the journey we had. And our track so far has been really interesting. First of all, and I'm talking to some of you that were probably younger than most of the technology that we're going to mention here. But remember, back in 2001, we were talking about early Python 2 versions. We were talking about CVS to be the versioning of your code. And those of you who work with CVS, you do not forget, especially because it cut. It was important at the time, but it cut, and then at some point you had Subversion, and now we have Git, and we have, of course, Mercurial and Bazaar and other stuff, but it's interesting. Technology moved in that way. Also, we started with software in the late 90s being built the same way software in the 70s were built, because you had to worry about memory. You had to worry about, okay, I need to write to the file system, and I need to worry how the file system is mainly going to react, because you had a server, you had an operating system, and that was it. Nowadays, what the hell is memory? What the hell is a disk? Because most of us develop solutions that go into the cloud, and the cloud can be running over layers and layers and layers of virtualization. So things change, and in many cases, your solution that used to be deployed on one server now is deployed as many serverless functions in a data center you do not control or have not even seen in person. Also, solutions were developed like monoliths, and then you had one big code base, and then you start breaking these apart into small packages, and then you start breaking these into small packages, but some of those packages are not even in the same language anymore because times change. You need to take care of that. And content was in a browser. I do remember, like in 2001, I was working for this media company back in Brazil, and we were experimenting with WAP as a way of delivering content to mobile phones. Except in Japan, everywhere else, consuming content over mobile were kind of a dream or a really long shot. I do remember people making jokes about no one is going to read your content, your magazine content, in a mobile phone. It makes no sense. The screen is too small and the limitation is hard, so it's not going to happen. Give up. But we come 20 years later, we have content everywhere. You have watches, you have TVs, you have your tablet, you have your computers, you have some refrigerators with large screens, and every device behaves a little bit different. Also, you have apps running in many particular devices, and you can push this content there. That's the beauty. And in that context, back then, CMS was king. You would start your site, you would start with a CMS. Or, of course, some of us would start like with bricks and glue and try to do everything by yourselves. But CMSs were there. So you had almost infinite number of CMSs, even in the Python world, even on top of Zope. If we go back 2002, 2003, Plone was not the only CMS written on Zope. Probably there were 10 or 15 other CMS. Plone became the most important. Plone became the one that survived. But we had Nuxio, we had Silva, we had Zope Content Management System. We had one here in Germany that was a vertical CMS focusing on physicians, right? So CMSs were like the center of your strategy for online content. Nowadays, CMS is a commodity. Many projects start without a CMS. You basically go and, there's this CMS as a service. Let's start using that. Or, really, I don't care. Let's go with Wix or any other platform that basically builds the site for me. But let's focus on the transactional part of my site, or let's focus on the transactional part or the data part of my application. So the world changed, and it changed a lot. And for us, the most important decision came back in 2008 or 2007 or 2008 when we decided, okay, there's this new thing called Django. Django is awesome. There are many other frameworks basically being built on top of Python. We had at the time, we had Turbo Gears, we had Pylos, and Web2Py, and so on. And Plone was being used to develop applications, not only to manage content, but we had all types of applications built on top of Plone, from YouTube-like portals to scheduling solutions for the Brazilian Federal Police. I remember back in 2007, some friends presented what they developed for the Brazilian Federal Police. For you to get a new passport, you would go to this application and select a date on a calendar exactly like the one we have on the screen right now, and then you would fill a form and so on, and everything was managed inside Plone. And that was growing, and Plone could be like a contender to Django and Turbo Gears and so on, but then we decided, okay, let's try to focus on the thing we do well. That's content management. That's managing content, not developing really rich applications or really complex systems. Let's focus on the editing experience. And what you see in here is how Plone worked back in 2007. This is Plone 3. And this is Plone 3 when you are authenticated. And also, really important, our user experience decisions were so ahead of its time. This is the same kind of interface we had back in 2001-2. And this interface is the one that inspired the early versions of Wikipedia. So Alexander Limi, the creator of Plone, developed this, and this was used by Wikipedia for many years because that sounds like a good idea. And Plone was that, and let's focus only on this. Let's not try to be a one-size-fits-all solution. And then we came Plone 4 a few years later, 2010, 11, and then let's revamp the user experience. We still like the concept of tabs, but let's play a little bit more. Let's change the whole look and feel of the default Plone site. And I believe the name of this look and feel was Sunburst. It was developed by the community, by experts in the community. We tested this a lot. It is, up to these days, quite interesting to use. It's accessible. I still maintain some websites that are built on top of this. And you can even manage the whole content using like a screen reader. And that's really important. So people with special needs can manage content in Plone without having to have their own user interface. We focus on that. And one interesting thing, Plone always focus on being responsive and being usable even on the smallest screens. So I can basically go now with my mobile phone to a Plone site developed back in 2010, and I'm still able to edit everything and manage the content there. So the user interface was thought to focus on this. But then times change, and we came up with Plone 5, and Plone 5 brings a new approach for editing. And it's this theme, this look and feel, it's called Barcelona, because it was developed by members of our community based in Barcelona. So we approached the things in a different way. Now we have a toolbar that gathers everything you can do for a given content. And also, important point, you edit content in Plone in the place the content is going to appear. So if you need to click 3 menu items to go to a content, this is exactly the same user experience that your final user is going to have. So it's not like, oh, I go to a complete isolated admin interface where I fill some forms and hope for the best. In Plone, we always cared about editing in the same context. People are going to read that, and it's what you see is what you get, and so on. So we focus on a different approach. Barcelona developed on top of Bootstrap. At the time, I believe Bootstrap 3, we had this toolbar. It was a really nice upgrade to the previous experience. And then we arrived to our days. This is Plum 6, is the version we are going to release in alpha over the next 2 weeks. And it brings a revamped user interface. It brings a revamped user experience. One where the focus for us is to simplify, is to make people that edit content not overwhelmed with a bunch of options. So we kept the idea of a toolbar. This toolbar, of course, changes according to what you can do. So, and here we are seeing how we edit a content. And the content is based on the concept of blocks. So you start editing the title of the document and you put some descriptions, and then, oh, I want to add an image here. You add a block for the image, you configure how this image is going to be displayed, and so on and so forth. And one interesting point is this whole front end is developed from scratch using React. We came to a point where we are able now to decouple the user experience from the server side of Plone. And we focus on that because in the end, we do have many more people these days working on front end with different tool set than the one like, oh, page templates or Jinja or whatever solution we had in Python. There are way more people working with React or Vue.js or even Angular. So Plone now allows you to build an entire user interface from scratch. And this is the user interface that we're shipping Plone 6 with. But when it comes to tech, 20 years is also a long time, and especially in the Python community. First of all, I'm going to start with, we start coding on CVS hosted by SourceForge, and then we moved at some point to Subversion hosted by ourselves, and then we moved to GitHub. And I still remember the moment we were deciding between it was clear that SVN Subversion was not supporting us anymore. We were too big for the problems that Subversion could solve. So we start discussing within the community. It was not a top-down decision, but it was an open discussion about, okay, which tool are we moving to and where are we moving to? Right now it seems quite obvious that, oh, it's Git. And you can basically decide, okay, GitLab, GitHub, and so on and so forth. But back then, I believe 2011 or 10 or 11, there was also a really interesting version control system developed by the Python community called Mercurial. And it was where the code of Python was being developed on top of Mercurial, if memory is not tricking me. So there was a push within the community to, oh, we should go for Mercurial and then for Bitbucket. And we had an open vote within the community, and it was decided, let's go with Git to GitHub. And this is one of the things I remember most, because of course I was one of the two other people that voted, oh, let's go for Mercurial and Bitbucket, which says a lot about my way of seeing into the future. But going back, when we started as a software project, we had one package. You download that, it was a tarball, you download that, you extract into a folder of existing Zope installation, and that's it. But you install. It was named at the time CMF Plone. Time passes, and then we have the concept of namespaces getting traction inside the Python world. And then everyone that was developing solutions on top of Zope got this products dot as the first namespace, right? So CMF Plone became products.cmf Plone, and this is a package you can find up to this day on PyPy. This is the main code base, or the glue code base of Plone. It's also on GitHub, so github/plone/products.cmf Plone, right? And also at the time we start seeing a push for, oh, let's start using eggs, let's start distributing code in a different way. Remember, when Plone started, there was no pip. There was no PyPI. It was a complete different world. You would basically download stuff and put in your installation. So during this time, we had this push to, okay, let's go with packages. And within the Plum community, we decided, let's go all the way. So instead of putting more and more code into products.cmf Plum, let's create smaller packages that have a single responsibility, and these packages are going to be imported by Product CMF Plum, right? And we also had this idea of, let's develop two classes of packages. One class is the packages that are going to work with any other web framework or are going to work with any other code base. And another class of packages are things that implement the first type of packages into the Plum world that makes Plum Plum. So you have Plum dot and then something like Plum dot rest that gives you a bunch of code and tools to build REST services, and then you have implementations of that inside Plum. And you have Plum Dexterity, that's a way of documenting content types of models of database models within the Plum world. And you have Plum App Dexterity that implements the default versions of Plum. Of course, this was really lovely, and we started with one download, and now we have more than 130 packages for every new Plum release. Of course, everything is automated, not everything is changes every time, but even so, we went from one extreme to the other, and I thank everyone involved in release Plum, because this is really a big effort. But also, within the Plum community, we always cared about going in small steps. We made a mistake in the past. I'm going to talk about this, but first of all, if you have a Plum site running version 2.0, a plain Plum site without additional add-ons, but a lot of content, you are able to migrate that content from Plum 2 to Plum 6, just getting the database, moving to a new Plum instance and upgrade, and so on, upgrade, and so on, upgrade. So you can, I never tried with versions before 2.0, but a few months ago I did from a 2.0, Plum 2.0 to a Plum 5.24, and it worked. And that's an example of how the community thinks about compatibility, how we think about bringing people, bringing older versions, and so on and so forth. So compatibility is important for us. Of course, that brings many other types of problems, because we need to maintain parts of our code base that are 20 years old. In some cases, when we talk even about Zope, we're talking about code that was written 96, 97. And we need to care about this. Also, within the Plum community, we have the strategy of always support older versions. So the average time we support like a major version is 5 years, at least. In some cases, it goes way beyond that. I believe we supported Plum 3, no, Plum 4 for more than 10 years. And that's important for us. Like we want to show our community, we want to show the clients that use Plum that they can rely on us. And for Plum 6, we are going to have a similar long-term support strategy, and that's important. But not every decision is a good decision, right? There was a time back in the day that the way of developing stuff within the Zope community changed. So we had to make decisions, right? And we went from, oh, everything done the same way it was done in 97 to, oh, this is the new cool way with components and getting, overriding stuff with configuration and so on and so forth. And that was the transition from Plum 2.5 to Plum 3. Part of our community basically left at that moment. And it was a mistake we never planned to do it again. We learned with that. If you do a really drastic change in the way you think, probably you have a different product. You're not going to name the same thing and keep things moving the same way, right? At the same time, we still have 20 years of legacy code. And how do we hide this? Because imagine, I know most of this code base by heart by now. But even myself, there are times that I go so deep that's kind of, okay, what's this? How do we bring new people on board? First thing is facade pattern. 10 years ago, a bunch of electrical engineers, more than 10 years ago, but a bunch of electrical engineers in Slovenia decided that, okay, we love Plum, but developing for Plum, when you arrive in the Plum community, is way too hard. Bringing someone that has no experience with Zope or work with Flask or Django into Plum, it was hard. So we implemented something called Plone API. That's a facade that's PEP 8 compliant, that follows the best standards of Python development. And this was done to lower the entry barrier. At the same time, the whole community started moving towards more standard tools. For a long time, we had our own system to manage installations. It was called Build Out. It was developed also by Zope in a time before pip, in a time before poetry, or put the name of your package manager here. So it was way before all those things existed, and way before Docker existed. So, oh, I need to install Plum, but I also need to install Elasticsearch or Solar server on the same server. How do I do that? Build Out would solve the problem for you. And of course, now we have Docker, we have Git, we have pip, we have a bunch of other stuff, and we are adopting this as the default, not trying to maintain our own solutions. At the same time, not everyone is a Python developer in the Plone ecosystem. So now we support any client or device thanks to a REST API that's part of the core of Plone since Plone 5, but you can install it even on older sites on Plone 4. And on top of that, we built a React frontend that leverages the REST API, and this frontend is free for anyone outside the Python community. So right now, you can basically say, okay, I need to put up a new Plum site. You can do it without having to know the whole Plum ecosystem. You just have a well-documented API. You have a starting point with the front end that we named Volto, and you install with Yeoman, create like the bootstrap and go with it. And you can even test everything with Docker these days. But communities also evolve, right? We started in a IRC channel, like a small IRC channel. Okay, at the time we had the time zone problems because Alan was in Houston and Limi was in Oslo, right? But besides that, it was a way smaller community, and everyone spoke English, and bunch of developers and one eventual designer there. And we use tools that are not here anymore, like IRC. Even though I know there's a replacement to Freenode, but come on, everyone moved on to new tools and so on and so forth. The whole world changed within this time. And of course, we have the lottery factor inside every community. Probably you heard about the bus factor. What happens to your community or your project or your company if a bus hits one person, right? We prefer to use the lottery factor. What happens to your community if someone in your community wins the lottery, the grand prize on the lottery? So first things first, life happens. Life always happens. Your community members are human beings. In our community, we had every single type of situation. We had people marry and having kids, some having grandkids. We have people, and it's important, there's a talk I'm going to mention later today that by Elizabeth Lady, where she's basically saying, oh, we have this person in the community that he's really productive. And what happens if he finds someone and he marries? The productivity of the community goes down. And we had also someone in the community that was really, really, really productive, to the point that we joked that he probably had a clone. And a few years later, he had twins and he disappeared from the community, even though he's close to us on a friendly level, but he's not writing code anymore. And of course, we have what we call the Mozilla effect. Back in 2009 or 10, Mozilla basically started growing and decided to, oh, we need Python talents. Where to look? They came to the Plone community and basically hired everyone in the leadership of the community, including the creator of Plone, like Alexander Limi. So at one moment, our whole community needed to build a new leadership. These kind of things happen, and of course, people pass, and you need to replace developers or designers and so on and so forth. And also, there's an interesting thing. Old Debian survey into their contributors mentioned that the average contribution time of a single person was 7.5 years. After that, people move on. Of course, you're going to have someone that's going to stay with the project like for quite a long time. But most of the time, it's not the case. Within the Plone community, we had both of our founders. They are not attached to the project anymore, even though Alan still works with Plone. He's not a core developer. He does not lead the development anymore. And you need to deal with that in an open way. You need to have a way of renewing your community. You need first to welcome any new member. You have no idea if that person is going to be like the future of your community, or if it's going to be someone that in two months is gone. So you welcome every single person, no matter if they are a developer or someone that writes documentation or someone that basically opens issues. These could be the people that are going to lead you in the future. You need to empower them. You need to basically say, okay, you're now sitting with us, you're making decisions, and at some point you handle the keys and move on. This happens within our community. I can create at least 3 cycles or 3 generations. We had the original people that went all the way from 2001 to 2011. And of course, there's a fluctuation here. It's like a window. And there's a second generation that came 2006-07 and went all the way to 2015. And there's a third generation that appeared 10 years ago and is still running. And we are seeing a new generation of people coming to the community. I'm not going to cite many names in here because otherwise I'm going to forget about people. But there are two pictures in here. The first one is the first Plone conference back in New Orleans in 2003. And the second one is when we were deciding what to do with the whole Python 3 deadline that was coming. And this was in Brazil in 2013. I believe if we do an intersection of people in these two photos, we should have 2 or 3 at most. And if we get the people in the second photo and get people in our next presidential conference, it's going to be 4 or 5, because the community has a stable renewal cycle. Of course, it needs to be cared about, and we have a foundation that helps us to do this. But this is the way to go. Really important. People is more important than technology. Relationships, real connections survive to career changes, to technology changes. For instance, there are people in the Plone community that are not working with Plone for the last 10 years. And they are still coming to our conferences, and they're still going to sprints, and they are still meeting in person. So you need to build stuff to connect with in a real way. We have our sprints, we have our conference, we have karaoke, right? There's a saying that people in the Plone community say that Plone is a drinking community with a software problem, because in the end, it really does not care about the amount of code we write, but the relationships we have. Some of my best friends came from this community. And you need to award initiative, you need to award actions, you need to put spotlight on people that are doing things. And you need to be local. Not everyone speaks English. Not everyone can travel all over the world. The first photo on the top, it's Asko, Oshan, and David Bain. So a Finnish person and 2 Jamaicans. And they're friends, and they connected online, but the relationship lasts because they met in person, they know each other. And that's how you maintain a really stable community. But problem happens, and you need a stick. You need to be able to enforce community standards. We had in the past a problem with one community member that's a person that's really important to our community in terms of code, but he was a terrible person online to newcomers. So someone would ask a question on IRC and he would basically bash the person, say, oh, there's documentation, you're stupid, and so on and so forth. And the foundation had to act, and we banned the person for a while, and we banned again. And this person now is kind of okayish, behaves well, and we still love him in the community. But it's not because you know about something that you're going to be an asshole to everybody else. Don't be an asshole. So this is really, really important. You need to enforce community standards. You need to push people to do the right thing. What about the next 10 years, right? First thing, I'm going to start with the bureaucracy. The foundation, the Plum Foundation, this is the board from 2012, I believe. So I believe it was the board from 2011 to 2012. And we need to renew. We are blessed because there are some people in the community that are really amazing, and they stay long with us. They are here for more than 15 years, and they're part of the board for 10 years, 6 years, 5 years, and so on. But at some point, we need to bring new people in. And this is an effort that needs to be done every single day during the entire year until we get people to join us. Also, we will need to rethink and review the way we allow people to contribute, because not everything is Python anymore, and not everything is done in the old ways, and the contributor agreement is a barrier. It used not to be a barrier, but there's bureaucracy. We can speed up. There are tools for that. We are working on that. And we are going, as a foundation, keep putting money on local initiatives. We are going to keep empowering people. We are going to highlight people that are making the difference for the community. What about the CMS? First of all, Plone 6 is coming. Plone 6 is awesome. Plone 6 is a real change, a game changer for the community, and it's a game changer for us. So first thing, we are going to simplify our whole package ecosystem, because it makes no sense. We need we need a solution that's easier to maintain, and there are parts of our code that are so stable that we are not releasing eggs anymore unless it was to make sure it worked in Python 3. And we need to invest in documentation. We need to invest in training. And we have some really good initiatives. You can go to training.plone.org, and you can go to our YouTube channel. You have free trainings available. We are going to be focusing on the API first idea. Plone is it's not only a CMS. Plone is not only a software, but it's going to be an API, a contract that you can build your own solution on top of it. And of course, we are going to keep focusing, as always, on user experience, on usability. For years, we were driving the usability efforts in the open source CMS world, and we are going to do that for a long time. What about the Plone community? I promise, karaoke. This is Tokyo 2018. We have 2 Italians, 1 Indian, 1 German, 1 British, 1 Slovenian, a Brazilian taking a picture, a Kiwi sitting on the corner, some Catalans on the door that are not on the picture, and we were all together. And I'm friends with most of these people up to this day. I keep contact. And let's put this, it starts with this. It starts with real human connections. We need to onboard new people, and these new people are going to be Plone, because we are Plone. Plone is first and foremost a community, and it's a community that survives technology, career changes, and so on and so forth. I have no idea if I'm going to be doing Plone professionally in 10 years. Maybe yes, maybe not. But those people, and here I also another picture of from Tokyo. This is like the board from the Plum community back at the Plum Foundation. We were in Tokyo, and then all of a sudden we were taking pictures with a group of people, random group of people. We have stories to tell. We have moments to share. And as a community, we build everything else. And another example, this is Sorrento. We are going to have a sprint. And Sorrento is starting Saturday. And we go to Sorrento every 2 years now, but we go there since 2006. It's like our European meetup place. And this is the way we keep the human relations within the community alive. I need to share one personal thing. I have no idea if I'm going to be working with Plone, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be part of the Plone community. Some of those people are the first people I talk when I wake up in the morning. Some of those people are the last people I talk late at night. They supported in many ways. The Plone community survived 5 city changes 10 different job changes, career decisions, 2 marriages, many other relationships, and my son that's now 9 years old, that's learning Python as we speak. So who knows, in a few years he's going to contribute his first line of Plum code. The Plum community is what keeps us up and running. We have a software. We are not as gigantic as Django or Flask or whatever other solution community you have, because we made a conscious decision a few years ago to focus on being a CMS, the best CMS. And one last thing, I quoted just the name of the founders and one other person. I avoided mentioning people because I would forget so many people that are important within this community. Some people of this community went and wrote books and became important in the Python community or even in other open source communities. But I would like to personally thank 3 people. Elizabeth Platty gave a talk at PyCon Canada that's I wish I know how to quit you. Basically talking about Plone and how Plone could teach stuff to other Python communities. Chris Ewing gave a keynote keynote at the PyCon US back in 2016. And Alexander Lusho gave a talk in 2017 at the PyCon Web. All these 3 talks expand on the topics I talked here. I would say that these people showed me and encouraged me to keep sharing this message longer. And even though some of them are not doing Plone on a daily basis, they are still Plonistas. And from time to time we talk, from time to time we joke with each other. I love you all. It's amazing. And thank you. And please follow us on GitHub, YouTube, and Twitter.
So thank you very much, Érico, for this very interesting talk on how the Plone community evolved.
Thank you.
So there is not a lot of time left for questions and answers, but I guess we can take one first comment. Ricardo, Plone is still the best CMS I've ever used. Yep. And then we also have a quick question from Helio. How much effort is it required to migrate from Joomla 3 to Plone?
For you, Helio, I can do that for free. You basically offer me beers. We have within the community some tool set for you to migrate. So if you're able to download everything as JSON, it's really easy. If you just have the database solution, we have a solution called Transmogrifier that you write a bunch of Python code that basically moves content from one side to the other.
Yep. So let me check if I can bring another questions up.
There's a question here from Alexander. Will Plum 6 support clients without JS? Yes, Plum 6 have server-side handling by default. So SEO that was always big in Plum keep being big.
Yep. I guess we can also take one last question. So how would Plum compare to Winter?
Oh, that's a really good question. First of all, Plum comes with batteries included. So one advantage of Plone is you start and you adapt stuff really fast and you have a site running. Waketail is a really good solution, but it's preferred by people that have Django experience. But I would say Plone is more comprehensive. I gave a talk like 10 years ago about how I could create an intranet, a site and an intranet with Plone using nothing but the standard installation of Plone in 7 minutes. Elio Loreto, one of the organizers of this conference, was there, and I spent like 3 minutes basically talking about live. In 4 minutes, you can basically set up a site and put it live and running. So that's the approach. Plum gives you the whole power from out of the box.
Yep. So I think we are running out of time, but clearly we have generated a lot of interaction in the discussion. That's very good. Please feel free to continue this conversation in our Slack workspace. And with that, I would like to thank again Érico for giving us this very interesting keynote on a very long-running community project and the insights into how to run such a project. So thank you, Rico. Have a nice day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye
Please
bye.
continue to check the program for the rest of the day. See you.